gosh, it's pushing 20 years ago now, I met a guy named Leonard Sachs who had written a book called Why Gender Matters. Dr. Sachs was a pediatrician and also a psychologist and very research oriented. But he was working as a pediatrician, and he found that there were an increasing number, and this would have been in the mid-90s or so, a rapidly increasing number of moms bringing in boys with notes from the school saying, this child has an attention problem and needs medication. And he would look at the child and say, looks pretty normal and healthy to me, and decline to prescribe medication.
Yeah, okay.
And then the same mom with the same kid and another note from the school would come back, and he started to wonder if teachers in schools knew what most doctors who've been through medical school and done the research would know, and that is that little boys do not hear as soft of sounds as little girls. And I think most moms figured this out.
I was going to say, grandmothers probably knew that.
Pretty quick. So he collected up some of the research to show that this is indeed a very common situation. And he went into the schools where he was working and tried to share this with teachers or administrators. Because, if you're a little boy in a school and you can't hear well, you would have an attention issue.
Sure.
And then your life would be about how not to die of boredom. I don't know if you remember being at a point in life where you believed you could actually just explode from boredom.
It's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. But, and so then you get these behaviors that are really not neurologically caused so much as it's just an environmental disconnect. So Sachs discovered a couple things very quickly. Number one, no teacher had ever heard anything like this. And number two, no teachers wanted to hear this.
Really? Mm-hmm.
Because it flew in the face. It was exactly contradictory to what they had been steeped in, the true, psychology of education. Boys and girls are exactly the same. There are no sex-based differences, and saying so is, it's stereotyping, it's generalization, it's harmful. And he realized there is a huge gap of knowledge in terms of people don't actually realize that boys have a different experience of things than girls. It's not better or worse, but it's different. So he got kind of really into this research. And what I love about Dr. Sachs is he's very, very objective. His research is extremely well documented. His observations are clear and based on fact. He doesn't have an agenda except let's learn the facts, let's use the truth and help kids learn better. So he wrote this book, Why Gender Matters, which hit New York Times bestseller list. And like I said, this is almost 20 years ago. So now, when you are making statistical generalizations, they are generalizations, so there are always exceptions. There are some boys who hear softer sounds than some girls, but in most all cases, the supermajority of boys just don't hear. And it goes through life. In fact, one study done, I think it was Virginia Tech or VCU or something, observed the use of the brain while listening to audiobooks in college-age students, right? And here they found that when women listen to audiobooks, there's neurons firing in both hemispheres of their cortex. When men listen to audiobooks, there's generally unilateral activity. So it's mostly firing in the dominant hemisphere, which in right-handed people would be the left brain, the language executive function, and not in the other side of the brain, which confirms something many women have long suspected. Most men are using half their brain most of the time.
So what is the significance of the brain activity that you were, from audiobooks, the observed brain activity? What was that indicating as far as the half in the...
Well, I don't know. Just that men and women use
Clearly
brains differently.
Okay.
I think we all notice that men tend to focus in and be able to stay very project-based. You watch, anything from a little boy doing Legos who's oblivious to the rest of the world, to a man working on a project for his profession, and it becomes it's very focused. Whereas I think we all notice that women are much better at what sometimes is called multitasking, or just being aware of everything
While
that's
they're
going
working,
on. That's a natural function of, I think, being a mother, is just having an awareness, and that would include maybe hearing softer sounds, sensitive to inflection in a child's voice indicating distress, even the way in which boys and girls see is different.
So what's the practical, for a homeschool parents at home, understanding that difference?
Well, first of all, give more volume when you talk to the boys.
Okay.
And maybe sometimes give less volume when you talk to the girls. I mean, there are many stories of, a dad disciplining a daughter, and then the mom says, "You're yelling at her." It's like, "I'm not yelling, I'm just talking." "No, you're yelling." Because we're not necessarily
For females,
aware of
that's yelling.
how they are. Certainly, in social environments, helping boys learn to attend more closely. The talk that I'm doing this afternoon is called The Language Arts, but not handwriting and spelling. It's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So listening is a skill. It's cultivated, and there are ways to cultivate better listening skills. And so we might say, okay, let's really think about the boys in terms of doing this more intentionally.
So what do you think about the idea of let the boys be active and calling, drawing, standing on their heads or whatever?
So that is super interesting. Sachs's study of stress and boys and girls. So it's a very different response. Boys' initial reaction to stress is to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which causes an increase in heart rate, an increase in blood flow, and it is regulated by moving. Females have almost the opposite initial reaction. It's not the fight or flight, it's the what you might call tend and befriend or hide and disappear. Their initial reaction to stress activates the parasympathetic nervous system, causing a decrease in heart rate, a decrease in blood flow, very possibly a decrease in body temperature. They may become nauseous or dizzy, and they regulate that by sitting down, lying down, curling up. It takes a higher threshold of stress to send a female into a sympathetic nervous system response. So, when we say to a boy, sit down and do this challenging, math or writing, just sitting down, he may be at a disadvantage. We might be wiser to say, stand at the counter and do your math. In fact, Sachs tells this humorous story. He was working with the school, and what they had done in order to sex segregate was they had to break the grades. So what they did is created a grade 1-2 boys and a grade 1-2 girls, which to me is a far superior social environment than half the class boys and girls all the same exact age. Anyway, he says, he'd been working with the teachers and coaching them, and they were implementing his suggestions. He went to visit this school, and the grade 1-2 boys teacher, wisely, had made chairs optional. So you could have one if you wanted one, but
great.
Nobody's going to make you sit in a chair.
Okay.
He said, none of these kids, 6, 7 years old, were sitting in chairs. They're standing at their desk, kind of hunched over, doing their work, dancing around, or they're under the desk, kind of caved in, secret agent style. But that particular school, by intentionally creating boy-friendly and girl-friendly environments, improved their test scores way beyond what they expected. And he points out, now he's not the first. All the way back, to Dr. Dobson, and there's many people who have pointed out that it's unfortunate the way for a boy to be successful in a school, in a classroom, especially in the younger grades, is to be more like a girl. Right? Sit down, be quiet, be verbal, answer every question, don't fidget, pay attention, smile, do all that stuff that is much easier for girls naturally and much harder for the boys.